So Vitex or chaste tree extract has been used in both Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine as a hormone balancing herb for thousands of years. So the primary use of it is for more of the mood swings and the hormone balancing, the fatigue, the overall sensations of androgen excess. So androgens are the other hormone group that we see, which is your testosterone, DHEA, and androstenedione in particular. Well, when we go through menopause, because estrogen is really low and progesterone is really low, we also see that you have an androgen dominance relative to your estrogens. So what that means is your testosterone, DHEA, and androstenedione that estrogen is made out of when the ovaries are working is now dominant because you're not making any estrogen out of your ovaries. So Vitex has this balancing effect to sort of push away from the androgens, support the progesterone pathway, and also reduce the impact to estrogen.
Ladies, are you ready to take control of your menopause journey? Introducing Mastering the Pause, the ultimate ebook that empowers you with the knowledge and tools to navigate this transformative phase with confidence and grace. Packed with expert guidance on hormone replacement, essential lab tests, personalized diet and lifestyle strategies, this book is your secret weapon to combat menopause-related challenges. Discover how to maintain a healthy metabolism, ward off belly fat, and embrace this new chapter of your life. Download your copy now at guide.hormoneshelp.com. That's guide.hormoneshelp.com. And let's make this a smooth and informed menopause transition today.
So what are the herbs that are most researched and most likely to help with the menopause transition and beyond? So today I'm going to dig in specifically to the ingredients and the nutritional aspects of menopause, specifically the things that have been studied and show the most promise when we're looking at supporting symptoms. So for anybody that doesn't know this, for the last 2 years, I have run a quiz online. 57,000 women take this quiz. And essentially the quiz answered several questions. So there was about 33 questions, and it ranged from everything from symptoms to how long have you been having them? What kind of symptoms show up together? And when you have that large of a data set, what you end up finding out is a lot of things that maybe you didn't know, some of which I knew after 20 years of clinical practice. But what it did give me enormous value in is understanding the symptoms that women experience and the common symptoms that women experience, particularly when we start crossing over different hormonal seasons. So obviously perimenopause and menopause is a specific season of life, but it often coincides with other things like high stress level, massive changes in your life, kids going off to school if you have kids, maybe a lifestyle change, maybe ailing parents, maybe all those things, right? And it may also cohabitate with other things that often show up in midlife, like thyroid issues. And so I know for me, if you listen to my story, I've was diagnosed with hypothyroid 20 years ago. I don't have Hashimoto's, but I definitely have a slow thyroid. And I've done all the nutritional things, and I tried not to be on medication. And, to some, I would say, negative side effects, I've tried to remove myself from medications or remove the medications from my life, and really had to go back on them. My body just, sometimes we need a hormone and sometimes we need to replace it. And so when you're in that menopause and beyond transition, often there's more than one hormone out of balance, but specifically the loss of ovarian function, ovarian failure, actually is very profound on the body. Every single cell except for 2 has an estrogen receptor. So what that means is that when we lose our ovarian function, when we no longer make the 3 estrogens and progesterone, and we have reduction of ovarian production of testosterone, every single system in the body feels it. And we get a lot of symptoms. And I'm a huge advocate for hormone replacement. I think that it's on the table for every woman. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how long it's been since you've gone through menopause, or maybe you're not completely there yet. I do think it's on the table to discuss, and it's an individual discussion with you and your healthcare provider. There's just too much literature and research that show that having our hormones and replacing them long-term is required, right? It is the one thing that happens where in medicine, we take away the hormone rather than replacing what's gone. If men lose testicular function, they inject testosterone. If your thyroid stops working, we add thyroid hormone. If your growth hormone stops working, we give growth hormone. If you can't make insulin, guess what we give you? Insulin, which is a hormone. But when women go through menopause, it's like, oh, nope, those are now dangerous. Or, oh, nope, you can't have those anymore. And truly, the active aging, the loss of ovarian function increases your risk for all-cause mortality. With all that being said, a lot of times maybe you might be a candidate for hormones, but you're not sure, you're struggling with finding the right provider, or you really just don't want to take them. And I've heard from some women too that they may not be highly symptomatic. Maybe they've got a few symptoms, but they're not necessarily seeing outward expression of the loss of those hormones. And so they want to opt for something more natural. So from that 57,000 women quiz, I actually created several products, and they're products designed to answer really these buckets of need. And particularly, I'm going to talk about what I picked for the menopause transition, women who are in menopause, and why. And I'm going to start specifically with the herbals, because I think that's the thing that most people don't know and may not be really familiar with. So the product that I created is a product called Menobalance Mastery, and it's a supportive product containing several herbs. And these herbs all come from more traditional societies and more traditional medical systems like Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, and even some of the medicines you'll find in more traditional societies in like South America and Peru. And they all have studies that look at their efficacy, particularly in managing symptoms of menopause. So the first one I want to talk about is black cohosh. So black cohosh has been used for thousands of years, and its real primary use is often in the most disturbing or most, I would say, troublesome symptoms of menopause, which is your hot flashes and your night sweats. So black cohosh has shown to really help reduce those, and it reduces the frequency and or intensity of those hot flashes. And it's through probably some level of phytoestrogenic effect and a alteration of the hypothalamus and the kind of thermostatic effects of this herb. Now, what does the research really say? So the Journal of Clinical Oncology in 2013 did a systematic review. So there was a systematic review in that journal that found that black cohosh could reduce the frequency and intensity of hot flashes. So appropriate dosing of black cohosh absolutely might be able to help reduce that symptom. Another study called in Obstetrics and Gynecology in 2005 also found when they compared it to placebo. So that's always considered a gold standard. When you compare a medication and or a supplement to a placebo and it outperforms, that is considered kind of your gold standard. That's a clinical trial. And in that particular trial, it showed that it reduced hot flashes compared to placebo. So it has some beautiful effects for just reducing that particular symptom. And through the mechanism, a lot of the mechanisms are seen to sort of modulate hormone expression, particularly from the adrenal glands. So our ovaries, right, which are what peters out when we lose our egg supply, are our primary producers of estrogen and progesterone. However, our adrenal glands can produce small amounts of that estrogen and progesterone. And it's probably some of this mechanism is what we see in the herbals. Also, our body fat, just so you know, our body fat produces estrogen through the aromatase enzyme. That's the enzyme responsible for making estrogen and testosterone. And so often that's why we gain weight. That's why we gain weight as we go through menopause, is because the body is actually providing more subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. So subcutaneous jiggly bits on the outside of the body. Visceral fat is the stuff underneath the muscle. And we gain more of both when we go through menopause. And I believe this is some of natural selection at its best, where the body's saying, hey, you don't have enough hormone. Maybe we need to give you some extra fat so you can make more. There's a lot of metabolic effects of menopause that I've talked about on the show, so I'm not going to go into that today. But that's one of the mechanisms because these hormones are so very important. So black cohosh is one of the ones that we look at. Another one is called kuai. And this has been used in Chinese medicine for a long time, particularly for your vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats. But it's also been used for vaginal dryness. So that's one of the areas that we don't talk about enough, but vaginal dryness, painful sex, or what's called genital urinary symptoms of menopause or syndrome of menopause are very serious issues, not only from an intimacy standpoint, but from a chronic UTI standpoint. Bacterial vaginosis and or yeast infections are all more prevalent when we get into menopause because the loss of estrogen reduces the mucus production in that area. The tissue gets dry, gets very thin and brittle, and can tear and have damage. but it also leaves the environment available for colonization of bacteria and fungus that you don't want, or yeast. So a study produced in Climactric is the journal in 2003. They found that dong quai had some improvement of vaginal dryness, but by itself did not necessarily improve hot flashes. However, when it was combined with other herbs, one of which was black cohosh, and this was in a journal found in 2011 in Menopause, the journal, found that it had this synergistic effect with black cohosh and that it reduced hot flashes and night sweats, and we saw some improvement in vaginal dryness. And so those two together are very synergistic at helping improve those very obvious symptoms. Wild yam. So wild yam has estrogenic and progesterone-like effects. And so it has basically vegetable form or plant forms of these hormones, particularly estrogen, progesterone. And it tends to balance sort of that fluctuation, take the edge off symptoms, and has also been shown to improve vaginal dryness. Another study in the same journal found no major effects on increasing symptoms, but that it did actually help reduce overall vasomotor symptoms. Another one is red clover. So red clover, again, has been studied in hot flashes and night sweats. It has some indication for bone health, at least from a traditional medicine perspective, because a lot of these herbs have these very weak receptor activities. So to the estrogen receptors. So they sort of tap on these receptors in a much weaker way than our own hormones do. And so they get a soft effect. A meta-analysis, which is a large analysis of the research available to sort of give a consensus, found it was done in 2006, and it was a Maturius journal, and it found a modest but significant reduction in hot flashes and night sweats with the use of red clover.
If you love what you're hearing in this podcast and you really want to start working on your hormones naturally, you can get a 10% discount. Go to metabolicblueprint.com/pod, POD 10, and you'll receive 10% off your order. And again, that's metabolicblueprint.com/POD 10. Get your hormones balanced today.
Which is a pretty significant finding. And then another study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2004 showed potential benefits for bone density. Again, it's probably through a little minor tapping on that receptor. We have receptors on our bones for estrogen receptor A and B. And when you stimulate those receptors, the construction crew that builds bone actually goes to work. So they ramp up. So think of it as a construction crew. More guys show up that day to build. And so that is one of the most important things about hormones is when we lose estrogen, we start to lose bone. And actually that process accelerates as we go into menopause, not even after menopause. It's actually in the years 1 or 2 or so leading up to true menopause. We start to lose pretty significant amounts of bone density, and then it is generally progressive unless we're aggressively doing things to preserve and or put on bone. So red clover has a little bit of indication for that as well. Another herb called rheumania. Rheumania has been used again to sort of overall modulate hormone balance. So it's considered something that sort of makes the hot flashes, night sweats easier, but it also makes the mood swings and some of the sleep disruption and fatigue better. So rheumania has not only been studied in menopause, but it also shows that it may help with just general fatigue. Now, most of the studies have been done overseas, but there was a Western journal called Journal of Ethnopharmacology in 2019, found a potential for regulating estrogen receptors in animal models. So what does that mean? It means rheumania may act as a weak estrogen. So think of it as a weak key that can click into the same estrogen keyhole or receptor that estrogen does. And so that it may have this stimulus effect that is less than, but somewhat equivalent. And that can be valuable because then it may stimulate the same efforts inside the cell or whatever cell it might be. It could be a bone cell, a heart cell, a, fat cell, a muscle cell, that it may weakly stimulate that cell in a similar way. And that's probably why we see some of the improvement in symptoms. And then one of the other ones that has been absolutely studied heavily, it's used a lot also in polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a hormonal imbalance that has a strong underpinning with metabolic imbalances at the same time. But it's called Vitex or chaste tree extract. So Vitex or chaste tree extract has been used in both Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine as a hormone balancing herb for thousands of years. So the primary use of it is for more of the mood swings and the hormone balancing, the fatigue, the overall sensations of androgen excess. So androgens are the other hormone group that we see, which is your testosterone, DHEA, and androstenedione in particular. Well, when we go through menopause, because estrogen is really low and progesterone is really low, we also see that you have an androgen dominance relative to your estrogens. So what that means is your testosterone, DHEA, and androstenedione that estrogen is made out of when the ovaries are working is now dominant because you're not making any estrogen out of your ovaries. So Vitex has this balancing effect to sort of push away from the androgens, support the progesterone pathway, and also reduce the impact to estrogen. So where does the research really lie? So there was a study in the Journal of Women's Health and Gender-Based Medicine in 2000 showed improvements in menopausal symptoms. So across the board, it has been shown to improve mood swings and agitation, all the symptoms of PMS, even some sleep issues. And so we know that it also improves those symptoms again in menopause. And the last ingredient is sage. And it's really actually two forms of sage. And sage has been studied particularly in night sweats and hot flashes. Again, a very valuable herb. It actually has some antibacterial effects as well. But there was a study that was published in Advances in Therapy in 2011, which found that it reduced the frequency and intensity of hot flashes. And then another study in the International Journal of Medical Research and Health Sciences showed improvements in menopausal symptoms. So that was kind of across the board. So one of the things that you'll see in the herbal studies is that it almost always focuses on what? Vasomotor symptoms. Why is that? Well, those are symptoms that are easy to quantify. One person's level of agitation, depression, and anxiety is different than another's, right? It's hard to quantify, which it makes it hard to do studies. And most of the time when we do studies on those particular types of symptoms, they use symptom scales and have people report in. Same thing with hot flashes and night sweats, but it's very easy to distinguish, did I get a hot flash or not? Did I get a night sweat or not? So some of it is because they're easy symptoms to follow and easy symptoms to track. The other part, and I have complained ad nauseum and talked a lot about the misogyny in medicine and the gaslighting of women, and also the just women not being included in studies up until 1997. And we're still tiny, small percentages of the research is actually focused on women. But again, up until really the last year or two, the medical community has really felt that menopause was just some sort of, transitional life stage and that it kind of sucked and your symptoms were really crappy. But, it was just the night sweats and the hot flashes and, what they call vasomotor symptoms, and that there was really no other concern. So part of the reason why we see these studies focusing on those symptoms is because they're easy to track. They're measurable because you can say number of, experiences during a day. You could also score them. It was very bad or not so bad. And it's been universally considered the major symptoms of menopause. But there's actually 69 symptoms. And even more importantly, those symptoms are actually indication of lower health span and shorter mortality and longer illness span even than men. We actually outlive men, but we're likelier to have poorer health during that time. And it's because of the loss of these hormones. So these herbs can help sort of modulate that experience. Now, the product that I made, the Menobalance Mastery, is a combination of these herbs. And together, they have this really good synergistic effect. And often, when used together, you get this sense of sort of well-being, this overall sense of relaxation. Usually the motor things like hot flashes and night sweats get a lot better. But fatigue and also mood swings are also better. Those are the things that are easy to notice. And it's a very simple oral herbal that you can take in the mornings and balance out the day. Now, the two other ingredients that I love are actually topical ingredients. The first one I've actually talked about online. It's a product called Biased Mastery, and it is a cream. And it is a cream that contains 4 milligrams of estriol, which is your weakest estrogen, and 1 milligram of estradiol in a lovely shea butter. aloe and jojoba oil combination. It's got a little bit of coconut and MSM. And so it's in this beautiful base. And what I love to do is just take a half a pump and put it with my other anti-aging serum, which I use an anti-aging serum called C60 Anti-Gravity, which is awesome. And I put that together and I actually use it on my face. So I use a very small amount on my face. And there was actually a study that came out 3 weeks ago that showed that topical estrogens in facial preparation, particularly in low doses, don't have this systemic effect, that they are very good at staying sort of localized. Now, you could use larger amounts and use it on the skin and the forearm and things like that and see a little bit of increase. But one of the things that happens as we go through menopause is our production of collagen goes down by 30%. That's why we see the thinning of the skin, the loss of the fat pads on the cheek, the wrinkling and age spots and all that stuff that you see. It's the breakdown of the production of collagen in our skin. And so if I can have a little bit of estrogen that I use topically on the face, it's beautiful, right? Because it helps reduce wrinkles. So I have been using that for months now, and I can see a difference. I can absolutely see a difference around my mouth and definitely around my eyes. So I love, 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 love that product. And if I wanted to have a bigger effect, I would use it on the inside of my forearms and use more of it. The other thing that I love, so the other hormone that is absolutely necessary is progesterone. So progesterone is the other hormone that's made by your ovaries. Once the egg is popped out and the what we call the corpus callosum, think of it as like the little crate that the egg is sitting in, it collapses on itself. And when it does that, it actually starts to make progesterone, that follicle. And progesterone then rises significantly until you start your period, and that's when it kind of drops off. And so it's often that fluctuation of progesterone and estrogen that can cause a little bit of our PMS and our sleep issues in the second half of our cycle when we're still cycling. And progesterone also very much protects the uterine lining from unopposed estrogen. So anytime we do hormone replacement, we always make sure that we have estrogen and progesterone. The reason why is we have estrogen obviously has that systemic effect and anti-aging effect, but progesterone also does. But for sure, it protects the uterine lining by suppressing some of the blood supply going to the uterine lining that estrogen actually drives. So estrogen actually makes the uterine lining get thicker. And so progesterone is there to balance it. And without it, you can have problems with abnormal cell growth. And it's because our body was never designed to have estrogen without progesterone. The other side of it is progesterone is really important for sleep, really, really important for relaxation because it helps potentiate GABA. It helps your chill out, relax, feel good hormone and neurotransmitter GABA work. So progesterone and GABA are your 1-2 punch for chilling out, right? Anxiety, as 1 in 3 women experience anxiety, 1 in 5 women experience depression during menopause, and a lot of it is this shift in hormones affect all these other neurotransmitters. So progesterone can be very calming, helps you stay asleep. And so I have another product called Progest Mastery, and it is a topical progesterone in the same base of shea butter, MSM, your aloe, jojoba oil, and it delivers 50 milligrams, so 50 milligrams of progesterone. And often you can use that on the inner thigh or the inner arm, and it just helps some of the systemic progesterone and helps balance things out. I love that product. It's a cosmetic use, so you can use it on any part of the body. So when I look at somebody who's in menopause, who maybe is just like, you know what, Betty, I don't know if I'm going to do hormones, or maybe I don't feel like I want to. Or in some cases, a lot of women say, you know what, I'm not really symptomatic anymore, so I'm going to wait this out, right? And I completely respect where everybody's at. I don't prescribe. That's the beauty of my world, is I can look at the research and I can be a scientist and not have to worry about me prescribing because I'm a PhD, not an MD or a DO. And it gives me the opportunity to be really unbiased as I can be when I look at an individual and when I look at the research. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a combination of nutritional supplements that allowed, my clients, my community to have products that could help the transition and beyond, all the way through menopause and post-menopause, so they can feel better, but they don't necessarily have to be on prescriptions. So how you use it is I use the Progest Mastery at night. I do, at least 2 pumps to help relax and feel better. And again, it's in a beautiful jojoba oil shea butter combination. I use a little half pump of the Bias Mastery on my face. I tend to do that only at night. I'm going to be real honest. I'm lazy in the morning and I don't put a lot of lotion on my face in the morning because I still have good hydration in the morning, which is a sign that your skin is balanced. It used to look like the Sahara Desert over there, but now my skin is much more plump and has better moisture, natural moisture. So I actually just use it at night. And then the Menobalance Mastery, basically you take 2 capsules. I will do it 2 capsules in the morning. And then if for some reason it really feels like you're still getting some hot flashes and night sweats, you can actually do 2 capsules twice daily. It's dosed, all the ingredients are dosed at 2 capsules to actually help balance your hormones. And it's actually at very therapeutic levels in just a single dose. But I have some people that are like, you know what, Betty, I get some serious hot flashes and I want to control that. And so you can play a little bit with dose. And so that's why I created those products. So if you're interested in looking at them or just understanding your body a little bit more, number one, you can definitely check out the products, and how you find those is you go to Metabolic Blueprint /10. And actually that'll give you 10% off your first purchase because you're a podcast listener, and you can go check it out. You can actually even take the quiz there and it'll help you figure out your primary hormonal imbalance. And again, that's Metabolic Blueprint /POD10, and you can check them out. So, and I want to give some just parting thoughts as I'm wrapping up this episode of Menopause Mastery. I want us to remember that, yes, menopause is a natural transition in a woman's life. However, we're in unprecedented times where we are in the first and only time, really, just in these last 100 years, where women actually live significantly past menopause. So in 1900, our average lifespan was around 57 years old. And only 50 years earlier, it was about early 40s, which scares the living crap out of me. I'm almost 55. So what that means is our bodies haven't really caught up to our longevity. And yes, it is natural. And I do feel like, there is a part of it. There's wisdom that comes from menopause. There's an extraordinary understanding, I think, that comes from menopause. There's definitely no given Fs to anything, to anybody, anywhere. Oh God, I love that. I love not really giving a crap about what people think anymore. It's amazing. I always thought I was pretty good at it. Now I'm like, wow, I wasn't nearly as good as I am now. So there's some beauty in menopause. But the reality is the aging process is 100% involved in every disease state. And if we can do something to powerfully live longer and healthier, for me, healthier is the really important one. If we can powerfully live longer, that is better. And if I can live healthier longer, even better. And so balancing these hormones is really important. I'll leave you with one parting fact. Research today shows that the women that have the most hot flashes and night sweats are at the greatest risk of cardiovascular and stroke event. So it's not just about shitty symptoms. It's not just about crappy night sleep and having to get up and change your sheets and change your pajamas. It's actually increased risk for heart attack and stroke. And there's a multitude of reasons why that may be there. But those symptoms are serious, right? They're indicators of something going on. And if we can use natural means to get that under control and to reduce it and to make your overall health better, shoot, why not do it? So don't forget, check out Metabolic Blueprint /POD10. You'll get 10% off your first order. And you can go check it out. Go take the quiz. It'll help you figure out kind of the major hormone imbalance you've got going on. Maybe you have more than one. And I will see you next week at Menopause Mastery. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Menopause Mastery podcast. You are why I'm here, and I am so very grateful. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any wisdom on creating the most exceptional life on our terms. If this episode has helped you in any way, please share it with a friend to spread the love, and together we rise. You can follow me on social media at Betty Murray, PhD, and you can reach me online at bettymurray.com.